Hello, everyone. My name is Olga Bodrova. I'm Director of Research at Global Access Partners, and I'm talking today with my colleague and very dear friend, Catherine Fritz-Kalish. Catherine is co-founder and managing director of Global Access Partners. She also sits on the board of directors for both ICDP and ICDP Foundation, and she has been a regular co-host and co-facilitator of the Pacific Connect Dialogues held in Brisbane. Now, not many of our members know that the story of ICDP began well before that wonderful organization has been formally established. And Catherine has been part of that journey every step of the way. So Kat, if you look back at where we started 5 years ago and what ICDP has become, has grown into and how successful it has become, what were the key milestones on that journey for you? And what do you think makes that organization so special?
Okay, thank you. So just so you know, while Olga is interviewing me, we have worked together for 20 years. So yeah, definitely a very dear friend, and it's a privilege to work with you. So this is definitely not something I've done on my own. We have done it as a collaboration, a group of people. But I guess to answer your question, I think when it comes to the milestones, really the idea for ICDP and Pacific Connect was just an idea, and at that point there were lots of heads coming together working on, well, what would this idea look like in reality? And I think there were times that we weren't quite sure what it would look like in the end, but being able to work with a team of people and see that idea become a reality it's a fantastic milestone and a real achievement to be part of the group of people that brought this idea to life. So that's one major milestone. I think the other is that in order to be able to run ICDP in the way that we do, we had to tender. We went through a tender process, and Olga, you were intricately involved in that tender process and produced a phenomenal document that a small group of us.
It was a joint effort.
It was, but it was a group of us that went to Canberra to bid for that tender, and I think winning that tender was a real milestone and a huge learning experience. And then other milestones over the last couple of years would be, watching this group of this network grow from just a few people that we connected with in the Pacific through our, at that point in the beginning, limited network, to see how that has grown into hundreds and hundreds of people and hundreds of people that are here dialing into this amazing online virtual dialogue. I think that's just quite incredible. The network that's been built with all the hard work from Simone and Tina and Benjamin and the rest of the ICDP team and the board, being part of that and seeing that network become something so valuable and so big in relatively short time has been a real milestone.
Fantastic. So it would be fair to admit now that we both knew very little about the South Pacific region when we started. So Kat, what were for you most memorable moments, most extraordinary discoveries that you made through your work with ICDP and Pacific Connect, and what they meant to you personally and professionally?
Thanks. So I had not spent very much time in the Pacific at all in my life, and so I didn't know much about the region when we started the process of bidding for ICDP tender. So I think one of the major learnings for me personally was about the Pacific and people of the Pacific and how diverse that area is. Traveling to Samoa and spending time there with you and some of the board members was incredibly eye-opening. All the people that we met in the Pacific are warm and welcoming. The food is incredible, and I love food, so learning about a culture through food was really important for me. and I'm sure it was for you. I know that we discussed how good the food was many times.
Very much so.
I think meeting all of the participants face to face in the dialogues in Brisbane and also at the Ideas Exchange in Sydney helped me to understand some of the similarities that we share as well. So Global Access Partners, which is the company that I'm managing director of, is a family business, and we treat everybody who works at GAP as family, even if you don't share the same bloodline. And I really felt that in the Pacific, and the people that I met in the Pacific, they understood that family business mentality really quickly. And so I felt, you know, quite connected to the people that I met because we shared that understanding. And so there were similarities, and there are also differences that I learned and have internalized. And I love learning about other places and cultures, and I think Australia has a lot to learn from the Pacific and a lot to learn about the relationship that we can build between Australia and Pacific countries. But I think probably the most important thing I learned is Pacifics are very, very different.
True.
And calling it the Pacific, it might be easy to say it rather than, you know, numbering the hundreds of small nations and countries there, but really they're very, very different.
Thank you. Well, I know from many, many years of working together with Catherine that her real passion is working with the community. And she seeks out always the project which can make a real impact for people who need support. So Kat, imagine you have unlimited resources at your disposal and you could channel them all from Pacific Connect into the region. Which areas would you choose to focus on, and why, and where would you think you could make your personally a biggest impact?
Okay. Okay, thanks for that question. That's quite a big one. I have been involved in impact businesses for as long as I can remember, and philanthropy. So I do feel that the work that I do needs to have some kind of meaningful effect. I think in the Pacific, I don't know it well enough to know that my passions in Australia for early childhood education or for helping homeless people would really be an area that I would invest in the Pacific. But I would say that enabling people to run their own businesses, to be self-sustaining and to be able to offer employment to others is probably the area that I would focus most on if I were to have, you know, an endless bucket of funds, because I think that way you are establishing a community of people that can really look after themselves and look after each other and think far into the future. Because if you can provide for yourself and you can provide for others, then, you know, the longevity of your community is guaranteed.
Fantastic. Well, finally, what would you like to wish to our delegates at this year's Ideas Exchange?
I would say seek out, if you can virtually, to speak to some of the board members that work very hard behind the scenes to ensure that ICDP stays on track and that the Pacific Connect program is delivered in the way that it needs to be. They are a phenomenal group of people. I have learned so much from each of them. It's a privilege to sit on the board with the people that I do, and it's a privilege to work with the ICDP team. So Simone and Tina and Benjamin and others that are involved. I'd say to all of you, seek them out, and I look forward to meeting as many of you as I can online and one day in person.
Thank you so much, Catherine.
Thank you.
So we are looking forward to seeing you all online on the 10th of September at the Pacific Connect Ideas Exchange Virtual Dialogue. Have a fantastic week.